Just to go back and make sure we've got what we're, so everybody can see the screen okay? Guess I'll ask Robert. Robert, you can see the screen okay?
Yep.
Okay. All righty. So this is a presentation I put together for a group of in a camera club in a retirement community, and when I thought, oh, and they said, well, you do something for us. I said, sure, and then they said, oh, by the way, there's 800 people in our camera club. So I thought, I better crank up my game a little bit here. So since I had it done, I talked to Robert and I said, well, heck, I got this thing made. Let's go ahead and share it with other people. So basically, that's what we're doing here today. Typically, when I do things like this, I get 3 questions. One, especially with the camera club, who are you? The second question is, what do you shoot? And the third question is, why should I care? And so we'll go through those 3 questions and then talk about some stuff as we go along here. So let's see. Who am I? You guys know this, most of this stuff. I was a freelancer for a few years. I was at the Oregon State. I filmmaker, photographer, science writer. I did, that's where Andy Duncan and I did the Cowboy in Mongolia documentary, ran on PBS. 1990, I was at Purdue for a few years. In 98, I was the executive director of the Indiana Higher Education Telecommunications System. In 2006, I went back to Oregon State, but that's not really for the sake of what we're talking about here today. That's not really when you've said, who are you? This is more importantly, I think, an image that talks about who I am, because, you know, for basically my professional career, I've been really involved in things, in sharing and identifying and finding things that I can share with people that they haven't seen. This is a picture I shot on the Great Wall of China, and I was there with a few colleagues who were walking farther up ahead of me, and they walked right by this. And, you know, a couple of them pretty fair photographers, and I think that's, you know, really the core of what I like to do, is to see things that perhaps other people don't see, or that they might miss, or you know, that you can't see. You know, who, you know, not everybody can get to the Great Wall of China. So so the kinds of things I do, you know, are close-ups, so you can see things, you know, inside of things, stuff that has color in it that, you know, maybe you were there, but it didn't look like this. And, you know, so that's the beauty of current digital photography. You know, also the emotion of things, softness and clarity and things like that create emotion. And although I love black and white, and I enjoy shooting in black and white or working in black and white, but I just dearly love color, and color does so much for you. So, and color also, you know, engages you when you're in other places. This is the cathedral in Toledo in Spain at sunset. And, you know, so the color and the environment and everything all mixed together. And so that's really, you know, who I am. The second question is, what do you shoot? And so this shot basically is kind of a history. The camera on the far right is a Contaflex with a Zeiss lens on it that my dad gave me, or let me borrow when I was 16, and I went to Mexico and lived in Mexico for 2 months. And then again the next summer when I went to Europe in 1967 for a couple of months. And you know, it was where I started. The next one over is a Topcon, a Bessler camera that my father-in-law owned, and he loaned it to me on occasion, and then critiqued the work that I would come out of it, and you know, really helped, I think, connect me into photography. The one in the middle is my current camera. It's a Nikon D610 digital with a 28 to 300 zoom lens. I carry it everywhere and use it all the time. The one next to it on the left there is my Nikon F3. I shot with that for probably 25 years. Absolutely loved it. Carried a 28, a 50, and a 200 millimeter lens, and it in several of the pictures you'll see today came out of that camera. The one below it is the first digital pocket camera that I bought. Is a Nikon Coolpix 900, which had a 30 to 300 zoom on it, and all of a sudden, digital photography started looking really good to me at that point. And then on the far left is my Leica, a C4 Leica that I shot until we couldn't get to film anymore. But a lot of people say, what's the best camera? What should I get? What's the best camera to have? And I think the answer to that these days is whatever you have with you, because the number of pictures you can get by just having your phone in your pocket that you would have missed completely is probably the answer to that question. What's the best camera? The one you have with you. So then we get to the real meat of everything. Why should I care? So there's three parts in the discussion today. I'll get a little bit into art and what art can show us as digital storytellers. Then talking about stories, every picture tells a story, and we'll go through some images that tell stories. And to wrap it up at the end, I'll talk a little bit about what's the next evolution, at least for me. Writing with light, as I said, to begin with, photo means light and graphy means writing. So writing with light, there are three main tools that I find valuable in this writing with light. One is obviously the light. The second is the lines that you see. And then third is the emotion that comes from all of that kind of thing. There are rules out there, everybody knows them. The rule of thirds, for instance, where you put an image in the lower or upper or whatever part of the third that seems to work for you. Another rule that people like to talk about a lot is the rule of converging lines. Where does this draw my eye when I look at the image like this? And I guess the thing that I would say about rules like this is that they're good to keep in mind, and you will see pictures in your head as you will see images that when you lift your camera that will be better if you keep these kinds of things in mind. But they all also are made to be broken. Take this picture, for instance, in San Francisco on a cable car. There at the bottom here, you'll see some converging lines. Obviously, there's converging lines there, and then there's this converging line that runs across the edge of that, the series of houses on the right. And then, of course, only in San Francisco would you see the pyramid, and it would give you converging lines just naturally. And then, of course, there's another one right here if you look across the lines of those buildings. So the fact is, converging lines, are there, and they all work, but it's not just one, and it's not a rule you have to just, kind of always just live by. So what can art tell us? In the early 90s, 90 to 93, I worked in Washington 1 week a month at the USDA. I had an office in the building on the mall. Actually, my office was literally a broom closet, but it did have a window that looked out onto the flag that was on the mall. And at lunchtime, I usually would cut over to the cafeteria that was on the lower underneath the ground between the National Gallery and the East Wing. And I'd grab something quick to eat, and then I would go and do 45 minutes of just kind of zipping through the National Gallery. And all I was looking for was stoppers. I wouldn't actually look for this room or that room or this painter or that set of art theory ideas and things. Just stop, whatever stopped me. And that's kind of what what happens when I look at art as it relates to photography today. What are the stoppers? Here's a classic stopper. This is Vincent van Gogh, the irises. It hangs in the Getty Museum in Los Angeles. And if you take a look at this, what Van Gogh does is draw your eye into this by outlining certain aspects of the picture that he wants you to take a closer look at. So the irises are all outlined. Some of the stems are outlined, and the stuff in the back is left kind of just to float away. And that's something that that happens, that you should, that at least it's a stopper when it comes to photography too, because the lines of, and this is a real iris obviously, but you can see how the lines are sharper when the color changes, and how your eye is connected by those lines as they come in. This is a Van Gogh piece that hangs in the Van Gogh Museum in Amsterdam. And as the reaper is going through cutting the millet, you can see that the outline, Van Gogh has outlined the reaper, and then in the back, the millet actually just is kind of filled in there. You take an image like this and you see here the same kind of thing, where the light actually is the outline. The light on the shoulder, on the hat, and down the far shoulder draws you right into the guy's face as he sits in his flower field in Honduras. Another artist that probably not many people have heard about, but just was a stopper when I was spending a day or so in the Louvre in Paris, is Capriccio. And what he does a lot is create things that you see through. So here you see an arch that you see through. There's stuff on the other side. There are things happening in the front. This is a statue of Marcus Aurelius, and you can see even stuff beyond the statue occurs. Here's another of Capriccio's pieces. This one's in the Philadelphia Museum of Art, but you can see again, he's got an arch and you can see through it. Your eye is drawn to the core of this picture and see the distance off. Things like this are great. And if you're, as you're walking along and you're looking for pictures, as you look through, you should see through things. Here you can see, this is in the Bryce Canyon National Park. You can see through to the tree in the inside of the arch. This is on the water at the base of the Nepali Cliffs on the north shore of Kauai. And you look through and you can see to the other side. Sometimes it's the abstract nature of what's going on that just draws you through and you see through. It's not that I see the ocean on the far side, this shot on the Gulf Coast on Florida, but it's the abstract repetitiveness that draws you into and takes you through. Sometimes you actually don't have to see through. It's the image which you think you see, and it draws you into the picture anyway. This at the base of the Great Wall, in one of the spots outside of Beijing. But I still like the arches. Arches always attract my attention. It goes back to my eye with Capriccio, and you can see the arch and it draws you right in. And then even though the image has these similar kind of lines that roll up the hill, and then the lines in the distance behind it, but it's the arch that draws you in and keeps you in there. This one, this is a piece by Eduard Cortez. It actually, I've never seen any of this stuff in museums, but I've seen in art catalogs, and I just got attracted by this stuff, mostly because I've seen these kinds of images before, and it's the color that draws you into it. The lines and the color, and this is just a classic. It's the golden hour, and it's the time you draw in. So you go back to this one. From San Francisco. All those lines I showed you earlier, they draw you in, but it's that color across the back of it that keeps you in this image as you look down the cable car tracks there in San Francisco. Another, obvious great artist, Claude Monet. This is in the Getty Museum in Los Angeles. Sunrise. A lot of Monet's stuff shows, reflections off of water. And he's, a very impressionist kind of thing. But what happens here is that this could be an impressionist painting, but it's the light across the water that jumps out at everything else that's on the canvas there. And this is, we can see that all the time. This is on the cliffs overlooking the Pacific coast of Costa Rica. And it's the subtlety of the light as it comes through, the same way that Monet would use it. Any place someplace where you can catch the light as it reflects off of some kind of water source, you're going to draw people into your image as you go along. Same as this one. this is the skyline of Shanghai. And it would be an interesting shot of all these futuristic buildings if you just cut it across right in the middle, but it makes it a much better shot if you have the Monet-like reflections through the water there. This is from the Rijksmuseum in Amsterdam also, or in addition. And the thing I like about this, the reason this was a stopper for me was the reflection in the mirror. What you're seeing is you're not seeing what's happening until you see it into the mirror. And I found mirror reflections to be really attractive. This one I shot in a very dark corner of a house of a mud home built in Inner Mongolia. And the Polaroid you see stuck in the mirror there is a picture of me taking some film of the mother in the family who was making cheese. And we would take Polaroids of what was going on and then give them the picture so that they could feel comfortable about what we were doing. We had a hard time talking to them and everything. So this was in the morning. Then later on that afternoon, I walked by her bedroom and looked in, and she had stuck this in the corner of her mirror. I mean, it was important enough to her that it became, a part of her favorite, her private place in her room. Edouard Manet, also an impressionist, I thought, has some, initially stopping for this was an interesting kind of response, but then why was this? This is a cafe concert, but it hangs in the Walters Art Museum in Baltimore. But I actually saw this in Chicago at a Manet exhibit that was at the Art Institute in Chicago. If you look at this, you've got the guy up front with the woman, and they're as clear as as you're going to get in an impressionist image. And then the person in the middle drinking the beer, and then in the far back, you've got somebody who's out of focus. Now this is 1879. This is somebody who's painting. Think about this. This is about 10 years after, they were first trying to take pictures during the Civil War, and now this is an image that we try to create with photography all the time, because using the depth of field really helps you create a story. As you can see here, the main part of the story is the glass up front, but the woman in the back in the glass and her hand gestures are really tell the entire story, even though they're not in focus. They just draw you into it. Manet also did this one. I also saw this one in Chicago at the Art Institute. So the woman up front, the skater in the middle, and then in the far back, it's the same thing. These were depth of field ideas that you didn't see with your eye, that these painters, especially in the Impressionists, were creating imagery that we didn't see with our eyes. The use of depth of field is just phenomenal for making things jump out at you. This image also almost becomes three-dimensional because of its because they flower against the out of focus background. And it draws, when you have a lot of things going on in an image, you can use the depth of field to create something that holds the whole image together. So now let's move on to the second aspect of this. The whole thing about every picture tells a story, like I said in the thing that they sent around, to quote Rod Stewart, every picture tells a story, don't it? This is a painting is in the Prado in Madrid. It'd be a stopper if for no other reason than it's 6 feet across and 9 feet tall. But the reason it stops you as you're walking by is because this face, this face, this face, this face, this face, and even this face of Velázquez himself, who painted himself into this picture, are all looking at you. And this many eyes looking out at you from this 9 foot tall canvas, and you got to stop. It is a stopper just unto itself. This happens all the way through. This is one of my favorite paintings of all time. It's in the National Gallery in DC. But it's the same way. The image of these people looking out at you. Now, they're not looking exactly at you, but what are they looking at? And that's what stops you. They're looking at something right below you. And so the image is just, again, it's a stopper. You couldn't pass an El Greco painting like this one in the Prado, because the same idea, the eyes are looking right at you. If this painting was of a nobleman looking to the side, I think you walk right by it. But the fact that he's looking out at you stops you. Frida Kahlo, 56, I think, self-portraits she made of herself over her fairly difficult life. And eyes either out or just off to the side are the critical part of many of them. And of course, then perhaps the grand master of all, Rembrandt. This is in the Museum of Modern Art in New York. He painted, I think, 25 or so self-portraits. But again, here's the old master-like color and shadow and the light coming down from above into it. But it's the eyes looking out, and every one of Rembrandt's, he's looking right at you. And it's the eyes that hold you in the image as you go through the whole thing. This is an image of a coffee farmer in the central highlands of Honduras. Again, going to stop you critically as you come through, and his eyes match those of Rembrandt's, really. This is a picture of a guy who was sitting on a street corner in Havana, in Cuba. And we were walking down this alleyway, and we're going to El Bogadita de Medio, where theoretically Ernest Hemingway invented the mojito. And as we got there, the place was just packed. And so we couldn't get in. So they were handing mojitos out the door to us. And so this guy gets in line and he starts to get one, and the guy inside, no, shushes him away, says, get away, get away. And so when I get up to it, I take two and I go over and I give him one and I say, now I get to take your picture. And he gives me this salute immediately. And of course, I shoot it. And I got 6 or 7 or 8, more shots of this, but this is the one, obviously. So the story here, not just the eyes, but the story from the photographer's point of view is, if you have your camera, you better be ready to shoot, because the best shot is going to come up instantly. This image, the eyes are important, I think, because you see the subtlety of the father watching carefully over his son, either me or the water, and that's, but you don't have to have this kind of, I'm looking right at you. You can have this subtlety of looking into the image and capturing the same kind of thing. This is an image of a young boy on the steppes of Inner Mongolia. We had been working all day shooting for the documentary, and he had been on the edges of what was going on. I saw him over there, and he was kind of hanging back and everything. And then he got enough courage to kind of come over, because he had never seen anybody like us at all. He'd never seen anybody that looked like us ever in his life. And he walked right up and he stood there, and I went down and I looked at him and I said, hi. And then I lifted my camera and fired immediately and got this shot. This lady, again, this tells you that the eyes don't have to be looking right at you to get for the story to come through. This was a lady. She was the wife of a well-known farmer on the outskirts of Nairobi, and we were visiting the farm, and the farmer was very proud of telling us about all the innovations that he was making and how his farm was going like crazy and everything. And I kind of moved over to the side with her, and through a translator that we had with her, she said to me, she said, oh yeah, look over there. You see that closet door right there? There are a bunch of chickens behind that door. I raise those chickens myself, and I sell them and keep the money, and I don't tell him about it at all. And then she turned and smiled. And so there you are. That tells everything with her look right there. This is Dennis Sheehy. Again, the eyes, the the concern on his face. This is him talking to the Chinese leadership, who were telling him at the time that they didn't really think that the ideas he had, that were the main discussion in our Cowboy in Mongolia film, were going to work. And the look on his face just really says it all. And he's thinking, what the hell am I doing here? The next morning, we were up before sunrise, and I followed Sandan, who was the wife of the head herder of the commune we were staying at, out as she went out to milk the cows. And it was dark, and it was not very much light. It was kind of gray, and she was doing her work, and I was watching and grabbing a few pictures here and there. And then the sun just broke up across the horizon. And I looked at her and she looked at me, and just boom, there's that shot. Again, you don't have your camera ready, you don't get it. This is one of those, couple seconds that image was available. This is a lady in the village of Dapingdi, at the about 8,000 feet in the mountains above Kunming in the Yunnan province of China. And she and the rest of the ladies in this village, they're part of the Miao people, who are a minority population in China, do a lot of weaving. And they weave some extremely colorful things, and including stitching and weaving for insoles for the inside of their shoes. And there's just beautiful, colorful insoles. And I said, so, but you make these insoles and then you put them in your shoes and nobody sees them. And they all said to me, don't worry, they make us happy. And I caught this of them showing how happy they are. A lot of times walking along, you find people who don't look at you or don't engage with you. And it's, kind of, if you're shy, it's not, you don't engage with them either. But sometimes there are people who just engage as you're walking along. And this guy was one of those guys. He was doing fried tofu in some short, small hutong in the middle of Suzhou, China. And he looked at me, gave me the high sign, and showed me that he was, doing a good job. And, you capture that stuff if you're ready, if you can see it. Or there's this, and it's all about attitude. This young boy was sitting there kind of hunched over, watching everything. And I turned to him and I just motioned with my camera, can I take your picture? And he instantly pushed his shoulders back and gave me the attitude. And clearly, this kid has some attitude. This is the cover of a publication I produced for the International Livestock Research Institute in Nairobi. Again, if you're going to put a cover, if you're going to put a picture on a cover, if you can put eyes coming off that cover, looking straight off, you're going to stop people instantly. A lot of times, depth of field and eyes, and the whole thing that, play there comes, as an interesting part of this. This is in Ketchikan, Alaska, a Tlingit man who was doing carving. And of course, I could have had a picture of him separately, and I could have had a picture of the carving separately, but the two of them and their eyes comparing, framing there, makes this a better picture. And it does give you a sense of this environment and this culture. Sometimes the eyes are iconic. This picture of Chairman Mao is one that stops anybody moving through the museum in Suzhou, China. But you see that the eyes aren't always necessary. I don't always have to see Chairman Mao's eyes to see those eyes show up in other places. And you can draw from the back to the front in this. And as this is the guard at the flagpole out in front of the Forbidden City in Beijing. A lot of times, like I said before, I take 3-4 pictures at once. And that's because when I first lift up the camera and take a look at an image like this of this woman pushing along with her brooms on the back, she's looking straight ahead. But as the camera comes up, she turns and looks to me, and I'm firing 1, 2, 3, 4, and it's 2 and 3 that get this shot, because 4, she's already looking back away. And so, again, be ready. but it's the eyes that get you. This picture of her looking forward, it's okay, but it's not much. Sometimes the eyes change. This is a young girl sitting on the steps of the bus stop in Yuscaran in the central highlands of Honduras. She was watching me and she was a little bit shy, but then as I started to shoot, she immediately looked over to see whether the boys who were playing soccer about 10 feet off to the right here were seeing her as she was getting her picture taken. And then that becomes the picture. Her eyes not looking at me are the interesting part of this shot. And no matter what, facial pictures, facial recognition, facial response, I don't remember what this piece of fruit is, but all of us know immediately in looking at this what it tastes like. I do enjoy and spent some time in Tuscany in Italy. And here in Italy, people, it's not just the eyes, but it's the entire body. It's the hands, the eyes, the body language. Everybody talks with hands and eyes, and these two guys are solving the problems of the city right there as they wait for the slices of cheese from the deli. These two ladies sitting on the porch solving the problems of the world as they see them. And then, of course, just a half a block up, two guys also solving the problems of the world, but probably related to the two ladies just down to the left. But they're solving a different set of problems. Two shots with two people in it always seem to have something going on, the dynamics of them. This shot, this lady has just come out with her daughter out of a pop-up health center in Honduras. They take the school, the local elementary school, once a month and shut down the classes and bring doctors in, and everybody comes out of the jungle and can go to the doctor. And she was just so relieved that her daughter really wasn't as sick as she was worried that she was. Then, of course, there's interaction. So this is in a Saturday market on the Pacific coast in Costa Rica, and the lady in blue is a local, and the guy was selling fresh squeezed orange juice, and she had just leaned over to him and said, "Hey, I'm a local. I should get a better price." And he turned and looked at me with a look that says, "Yeah, right." And again, you don't have the camera up, you don't get it. In Santa Clara, in the central part of Cuba, at the Senior Citizen Center, these three ladies were explaining how to use a fan to flirt with someone when there was a chaperone in the vicinity. And as you can see across all three of them, their eyes and their facial expressions are really making the case for how you would not talk, but actually, flirt in the same way. You don't always have to see what is being seen to get the story in the picture. These guys are pretty excited about what they're seeing. She's nonplussed, and the guy on the far right could care less. But between all of them, there's some interesting interaction going on here. This shot also from Da Ping Di, where I showed you the pictures of the ladies. These are the leaders of the village. They're sitting, and they were serving us a chicken feet soup lunch. And at this moment, the head of the Chinese delegation that was with us was explaining to them how valuable all the Chinese government programs were for their village. I'm guessing that you can see very clearly that none of them are buying it. Not one of them in that room was buying what that guy was selling. In late 1990, early in 1989, late and early 1990, a hurricane came through and decimated quite a bit of Honduras. This is the town of Ocotal. And these ladies were after their town was basically blown up by boulders coming down from the top of the mountains, because they had 28 inches of rain each day for 3 days, and the tops of the mountains just washed off and down through the valleys and blew up houses and villages all along. These ladies went and started cooking all night, and then baking all night, and then took their bakewares, their cookies and their cakes and everything, down to the Pan American Highway about a mile away, and sold them, and then took the money that they made from that and put it in a commercial bank in Tegucigalpa, and then began making loans to the people of their village to rebuild their houses. So this is basically the board of directors of the newest bank of Ocotal. And you can see the lady in the middle with the pink. She was the leader of the exercise. Her daughter with the striped shirt basically has the enforcer image for the group. I asked them, so what have you learned being the bankers of the village? And she said to me, she says, what I've learned is that a donkey is not very good collateral. So again, people together. I love the lines across, like the either Ocotal or here in this is basically Cienfuegos in Cuba, on the eastern shore of Cuba. And these guys are in the center square around noon, getting there every day, talking it through, discussing what the issues are, and basically, again, solving the problems of the world. If you're younger, it's a different set. This is the steps of the Palazzo in Volterra in Tuscany. And the girl on the right, she would have nothing to do with any of them. The two boys in the middle don't even know there are girls around them. And the three girls on the right are basically sharing the best gossip that they've heard for the day. This is a microcosm of the world right there. And it's not all people. Sometimes images come from, in this case, primate, kind of anthropomorphic look. This monkey, this capuchin monkey, is definitely concerned about what's coming up next after he stole those bananas. Or this monkey, who basically took a look at the lens, his reflections in the lens of my camera in Costa Rica, and walked right up to it until we could get a portrait. So not all pictures. I mean, a single picture will tell a story all the time, but sometimes it's more than that. When we were in Alaska, and I took an excursion onto the bay in one of the central Alaskan cities, and I went out. It was a 14-person photo excursion, so not a whole lot of people, which was good, and a boat that I could see all the way around, and a photographer took us out there. And I tell you, I mean, half the people on the boat brought their point and shoot cameras, and they were taking pictures of their feet and everything. And there was a guy who literally, I literally think he took his brand new Canon out of the box in his car and walked onto the boat. And he was having a hell of a time. And the photographer was just pulling his hair out, trying to get these people kind of organized. And he looked at me and he said, "Do you need any help?" And I said, "No, I just need to be in the right place at the right time." And he said, "Yeah, I got you." And he said, "When I tell you, you go exactly where I tell you to go." And so we're going along, and 20 minutes later, he looks up, he looks at me, he goes, "Get to the front of the boat." And so I did. I got to the front of the boat. I had my camera set on 8 frames a second, and just then the whale breached the water right in front of me. And I just shot click, 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 right across the horizon as it went up and back down. And again, it's nice to have a camera, but it's also nice to have it when the time is right. So that's about it for that. Let me kind of wrap things up here with a little bit of discussion of evolution. You know, the kind of thing that I've done for literally decades has been more journalistic. You got your camera, something happens, you take a picture of it. And hopefully you take enough, or you get in the right place, or you know, luck is good, or luck is also made because you're there, et cetera, et cetera. But David Watkins and I are still good friends. Many of you know David from Cornell. And he and I went on a photo workshop to the Grand Canyon. It was called the Monsoon Workshop, and it was supposed to be sunrise, sunset, and lightning. And I thought, okay, this is going to be great, because going back to the art aspect of this, I'm a big fan of Albert Bierstadt, and he paints these giant paintings with just the horizon, the light, the just everything across this the landscape as it just jumps out at you. And I thought, okay, well, this Grand Canyon visit is going to give me a chance to get some stuff like that, and it really did. Here we are, sunrise on the south rim, and as the sun comes up, you can see the subtlety of the color and everything. But as the light comes through, it offers you that grand vista, that you're looking for in these landscape shots and stuff like that. And this workshop was fun because it was different. I mean, it was with landscapes, you set up your tripod and you consider, what's happening with the light, what's going to happen with the light, what your depth of field ought to be, what the lighting ought to be, what the whole kind of mix of technical and artistic, kind of all fall together in this kind of thing. And you work on, you work hard on single individual images like this to try to get, what's going on in front of you. And I still take pictures of people. All the landscape guys around me go, no, don't take pictures of people. That's fine. I think people, make a landscape shot like this too. But still, I still would recommend that you keep your camera ready all the time. We got to this place off the North Rim first thing in the morning. We left at like 4 in the morning, and it was still dark. And it was, when we got here, it was gray. It was cloudy. Where wasn't sure. We weren't sure what we were going to get. David had set up about 10 feet down from me, and we would go into these places and set up our gear really fast and set up our stuff and be ready to shoot right away. And then the rest of them were going around, sitting around, taking their time and stuff. And he said, Dave, the light's coming. And we looked up, and boom, we had this pink. All of a sudden, this gray turned light over everything. It lasted for about 90 seconds. Towards the end, Dave goes, it's going. And in 10 seconds, it was gone. And we got it, and they didn't. That's just the way it goes. The grand vistas are great, though. I love it. I mean, it's just the sunsets are beautiful. That you can do a whole lot with them. There's a whole lot going on. The sunrise, as the light comes up and starts filling in all of the gaps, you just get some really interesting and great pictures. But the morning of the 4th day, we'd been out 3 days, and then we moved over to the North Rim. And I was telling David, if this was the sunrise sunset workshop, this would be great. We'd be getting what we wanted, but we haven't seen any lightning at all. And as you can see, the setups we had were on the deck of the Grand Canyon Lodge on the North Rim. We all had lightning triggers on our cameras. That basically lightning, just before it goes, fires up, it gives off an infrared signal. And so these lightning triggers we had would read the infrared and then open the camera just in time to catch the lightning. And so across the western horizon, all of a sudden we were getting some lightning. Our triggers were going off all over the place. And, this is about 25 miles away. And, it was good. I liked it. That's, it's subtle, and it's got the, things going, little wispy kinds of lightning things going on. And yeah, that's pretty cool. But then all of a sudden I looked to my left, and I took this picture actually with my phone, because the tail end of this storm that was going off to the right, 25 miles away, was just about to come over the top of us, and it had just opened up, and as you can see here, just basically dumping water like crazy. And so boom, there's a shot of lightning right there. That butte in front of us is about a quarter of a mile away. And so this is what, half a mile, out in there. Nice shot, not terribly artistic, but technically we got it, And so the head of the workshop at the time looks at everybody and goes, listen, you're all adults. It's not my fault if you get hit by lightning, which was a signal for a lot of people to say, well, I guess I better pack up and get inside, because this was coming right over the top of us. And I thought, oh man, I'm going to hold my ground here for a little bit. And besides that, I looked at him and he wasn't packing his stuff up. And so everybody's packing up, and all of a sudden, boom, this one came, hit the butte right in front of us, quarter of a mile away. I cropped it into this. You can see the fine wispy parts of the lightning. You can see, all of the, how it illuminated the butte. Just one of those amazing and classic money shots, so to speak. There were only 3 of us out of the 12 in the workshop who got this shot. And so then I'm out there, and I thought, all of a sudden, about a minute and a half later, this double hit, and the rain was coming in right over the top of us. And I thought, okay, I think I might have pushed my luck just a little, just fine enough here. And I went ahead and went inside. And so that's it. That's the end of my story. I'm sticking to it. You want to see more pictures? You can see them at my website. It's listed there, daveking.smugmug.com. And I'm going to stop sharing here and see if we can't take some questions. How's that look? Can you see
Awesome,
everybody?
Dave. Awesome.
All right,
Awesome.
there we go.
Very cool. Very cool. Yeah.
So that's what you do in your retirement.
Do you do a lot of editing on your photographs? Either
Processing, I do some. I don't use Photoshop. It's way too much work, I think. I use a software called On1, so it gives me some of the basic kinds of things to use, and what mostly I do is a little bit of contrast and crank up the color just a little bit, just because a lot of times you get a lot of flatness to things that are out there in the initial shots. And with a little more contrast, you can bring things apart from each other, and so yeah, that's mostly what I do, but not a whole lot of other stuff to it.
The picture of the Great Wall, your focus was so clear. I love the contrast of the near that was so crisp and clear, and then kind of what was almost in the mist, or
Right.
far away. Did you process that a little bit?
Yeah, I have to admit that of all of the images you saw, that one I probably worked the hardest on, because
Beautiful.
I knew what was there. I could see what was there. I could see all of that off into the mist. And I worked and worked and worked on it. And actually, to be completely honest with you, I sent it to my buddy, David Watkins, that we mentioned before. Many of you know him. And he said, oh, let me try it. And so he worked it a little bit and then told me some things and sent back. And between the two of us, that we ended up with that image. It is, it's a photograph. It clearly is, but it looks almost more like a drawing or a painting when you get to it. Yeah.
Yeah, art.
And you know who I'm talking about, Jeannie, because you were 100 yards up the Great Wall from me when I shot that.
I didn't want you to say, oh, Jeannie and Bob Rubini just kept going and they missed it. You're right. So where's your next adventure when we finally
Oh,
get our vaccines and can go someplace.
yeah, my next adventure is gonna go see the grandkids. I haven't seen them in a year or more than a year.
Yeah.
You only saw one picture in this group of the grandkids. They make up about half of my portfolio.
I'll bet.
Yeah.
And
So
those
do-
of us without any appreciate seeing those, Dave.
Yep. Yep.
So you're all ready to go travel? Are you vaccinated?
I am in the middle. Nancy and I got number one about 2 weeks ago, and we get number one in about 2 weeks. So then all the blinders are off.
Congratulations.
Yeah. How about the rest of you? Who else is getting? The rest of you must be ready.